Tonight, a CBS 2 News investigation. We're learning new details about a potentially deadly danger in your car from a former auto executive who's never spoken out on TV until now. CBS 2's Randy Paige has the story.
He's on the passenger side.
On July 30th, 2014, on a rural highway, 49-year-old Balde Solis Gonzalez burned to death inside this SUV.
The doors on the vehicle were not jammed. Why didn't the man get out? The seat that he was in had failed.
Paul Sheridan is a former Chrysler safety manager who is now paid to provide expert testimony in lawsuits filed against the automakers.
The seat back collapse caused his paralysis, and he could not escape the fire.
You're talking about a horrific death.
I don't know of any more horrible a way to die than burning to death. In my opinion, he was probably fully conscious while he died.
And as we first reported in March, this is just one of a growing number of horrific accidents that have recently surfaced through lawsuits filed against the automakers involving collapsing seats. Each of these victims, many of them children, were either killed, paralyzed, or seriously injured.
Watch what happens to the heads of the dummies.
Paul Sheridan says he first became aware of the danger of collapsing seats when 60 Minutes broke the story in 1992. That's when Sheridan was in charge of the Chrysler minivan safety team. And now, for the first time on camera, he reveals what happened when he called on his team to conduct an internal investigation.
And I was told to retrieve and destroy the meeting minutes.
Then he says he was fired.
They dismantled my safety team and said that our mission had been fulfilled. Well, that on its face is ludicrous.
Sheridan says the seats in the Chrysler minivans were failing, and he says this internal Chrysler document made public in a civil trial shows Chrysler and the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration tried to cover it up by refusing to release this crash test video to the public.
And in this particular instance, it was videotapes that demonstrated that the seat would fail in minor rear-end collisions, leading to injury and death.
The federal standard for seat strength was established in 1967. It's known as Federal Motor Vehicle Safety Standard number 207.
You can buy a lawn chair at a retailer and apply the 207 seat standard, and it will pass.
And the 207 standard has never been updated.
And the only thing that has changed over the years is how many people have died, and that number keeps climbing.
Clarence Ditlow, executive director of the Center for Auto Safety in Washington, D.C., says NHTSA isn't keeping track of how many people are killed or injured when seats collapse, so he did some investigating of his own. He says he found 64 cases of death or serious injury, and he says each year as many as 50 children die in the back seat when the front seat collapses in front of them. Far more than the number of people killed in this year's massive airbag recall, which made worldwide headlines.
There's a huge public health crisis out here because we can't continue to kill 50 children every year in the rear seats of cars.
I think it's a critical issue.
Joan Claybrook is a former NHTSA administrator.
It's unbelievable that both the auto manufacturers would make cars that have seat backs that fail and kill and injure their customers, and that the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration would allow them to do so. I think that it's really criminal, actually.
The automakers respond by saying their seats exceed all federal safety standards.
That's such an outrageous statement. If a lawn chair can pass the standard, and it can, then the manufacturer should be ashamed of themselves for using that as an excuse.
Claybrook is now calling on NHTSA to immediately propose a new rule updating the seat strength standard and to subpoena the automakers for all data involving lawsuits, deaths, and injuries related to collapsing seats.
None of them should ever fail. And if they have one that fails, then they have failed the American public.
The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration responded to this story with the same written statement they gave us when we first reported on this issue a few months ago. It says, in part, rear impact crashes account for roughly 3% of all traffic fatalities. NHTSA concluded that's too small of a percentage to warrant a rule change.
I think that's ludicrous that they claim that there are not enough deaths and injuries.
Too many children, too many parents have been killed or paralyzed in seat back collapse cases. Once again, NHTSA has failed the American public.
A failure, he says, that is costing precious lives. Randy Paige, CBS 2 News.
Now, the experts tell us car seats are stronger now than they used to be. The Center for Auto Safety says the strongest seats are often found in Mercedes, BMWs, and Volvos.
Now, to protect your children in the back seat, place them behind an empty front passenger seat or behind the lightest person in the front seating positions.